I do believe we're live, so I'll say indeed, and greetings unto you, beloved and holy friends. I thank you for joining me again on another conscious evolution, another opportunity for us to consider today's centering thought. The difference between the part of us that is limited and the part of us that is infinite. The part of us that will forever be unfulfilled, and the part of us that is forever fulfilled. All right? And there is this dichotomy of experience, this, this difference, this polarity, this gifted memberships that I am just being blessed by. Gary Lee got a blessing. Yay. Extos and Fit 2, Golden Donut. And Simon says, GC, Jovan, have I told you I love you? I know I will. Over and over. Thank you, Zhao. Suddenly just like extra breath of fresh air. Even though this human experience might be a limited one, it can still give you feelings of fullness. Right? And that should be what we look for. If we find within this experience of limitation, of physicality, right, there's only so much you can eat, there's only so much you can drink, so much you can see, so much music you can listen to. There's like a cap, right? And in that way, anything that has a cap, anything that has limitation, is in stark contrast to what you are fundamentally on a deep level as a being. Maskan? You know what I mean? That which you are is so infinite that it literally dissociates, being in a world that's finite. Hey Zhao, saying hi to Maskan too. So much love. It's nice having you here with us. Today, we are considering this dichotomy, this difference in being, where we, as human beings, as physical forms, are bound by limitation, right? A bunch of them, an exorbitant amount of them, while at the same time experiencing from a place of limitlessness, the infinite, right? The experiencer, the consciousness behind this whole, right? Even if you don't think there's any infinity to your consciousness, we can think of the infinity there is to reality, right? That yes, we have an observable universe, but within what is that observable universe? And if that is in what it could be, in what is that? Right? It's so vast out there. It's terrifying. Literally, like if you start thinking about it, it might just scare you how big reality is. And here you are, experientially, literally the middle of it. Right? That's a certain fullness. There is a quantitative, qualitative experience that arises from all of these limiting inputs, right? The limitation that I'm allowed to see, limitations of my hearing, and the little hairs and the frequencies they potentially vibrate at. The limitations there are in my smell and my taste. The limitations there are in my ability to move my physical form and the energy that it takes across this planet's surface. Right? And yet still, no matter how many of these limitations I find, there is still this fullness in the center of it. Right? And that fullness is something that we can extrapolate into the consideration of someone who's blind. Someone who's blind doesn't suddenly want to not be alive because of their blindness. Their experience is just as full as yours is. Because there is no limitation, right? There is no true limitation to your experiencer. Your limitations just convinces you have limitations. It's like, yeah, I'm a human being, and if I jump off building, then limitations, let's say. Which is true, right? Admittedly. However, there are other things about the limitations too that try and convince you of the same kind of certainty. And the same kind of, I want to say the word stakes, right? That if you do this thing that you might have convinced yourself you were limited to not doing, then you might die, right? Your ego might. Who you thought you were might cease to be, and then you'll be something new. And I feel that process is one of the most terrifying things ever. And as soon as you stop really identifying with the parts of you that is the limitation, and you start identifying with the part of you that is the fullness, then it's almost like the fullness always serves as foundation, infrastructure for the extremities, the buildings, the parks, the entertainment to be built upon, right? What is our layer one experience? Right? I almost think of that as like the key. As soon as that truth establishes in consciousness, eyes go open. What? Huh? Bet starts showing up for it, right? To make it true by its own actions. To remember that that truth was the point in the first place. I'm thinking about this comic, right? And again, we talked about religion a little bit earlier, and I'm not religious in the traditional sense. But there was this comic of a traditional godlike figure, white beard, white gown, in the clouds, and it was giving a new life an opportunity to go to Earth. And it says to the little boy, go and have fun and try and not be mean. And the boy goes, what? That's going to be easy. And then God says, yeah, you'd think. you'd think. You'd think it's easy, but it's not. It's not easy even to those who are spiritually enlightened. Right? And I feel like that's the limitation that any spiritual teacher probably doesn't want you to see. Right? That's the thing that's embarrassing, is that you can keep evolving and for as long as you exist, you'll still have limitations in that traditional sense. Right? Maybe you can evolve to the point where your limitations no longer bother you. Maybe that is the point. Because again, your evolution looks like the articulation and understanding within yourself that you are soul, you are infinite, you are untouchable by this external experience, right? And there is this place, let's call it, this place deep inside of you, right? You've seen it. You've meditated and closed your eyes. You've gone to sleep. There is a place inside of you that allows for refuge, that allows for rest, that allows for escape, if we're going to call it that. I'm tripping out about how full that experience can be as well, right? You can have a dream and you can be convinced. For me, the fact that you can have a dream and you can know another person, not know like I know everything about you, but you can be like, oh, that person that I know and care about, now here in my dream. And then that person talks to you as themselves, using their voice, saying things that their minds might come up with, right? And you can do that in your brain. Again, fullness, right? And then maybe if you were so inclined and potentially aware of how to lucid dream, you can decide with this person that you know in your real life that we're now gonna go and fly. And then you blast into the air, you and your loved one flying suddenly in there, sleeping, but flying, not bound by the same limitations, but still caught within what you thought were, right? The confines of your mind being a limited space in that way. And we are going to create experiences technologically as well that tunes into that hyperrealism. Because it's still real that I want to fly. But I have limitations as a human being. So if I can put my mind in a system that gives me the experience of flight, does that take away from my fullness? Or is that like one of those questions that's funny to ask, right? You can't take away from something that's full. Not in the sense that we're talking today, right? If we're comparing limitation to fullness, right? Limitation in this context is something you can take away from because there's a limited quantity. Fullness, the infinite in that way, if you take away a fraction, if you take away half of infinity, if you take away 9/10 of infinity, what you have left is still infinite. Right? And I feel like that's something that I personally get very caught up in as well. Is this idea that I'm doing something wrong. That there's some right way to existence. That if I do it the right way, then things are gonna turn out the right way. And I still do believe that, in part. I'll be honest. But the rules I have established for myself has become more important, right? It started as a fundamental rule of love is true. And then the extensions of that, about what that looks like, showed up in part as this. And in part as my flowers, and in part as the yoga. And I can't imagine in how many more ways it's supposed to show up. But I do know that we are, especially together, still the infinite, right? We might have limitations as physical forms, but the part of us which is pushing these physical forms forward is infinite. Right? Another way to really conceptualize and visualize this concept is like being at the tip of the spear. Right? Being at the tip of the spear, right? Like that molecule that's right up there, right in the front of reality. Right? Being thrusted through something. Imagine a spear going straight through a tree. Maybe not a tree. Straight through a bronze figure of someone deplorable, right? Righteously, that tip of the spear is going to take a beating. Goodness, so much resistance, so much in-your-facedness, absolutely getting blasted by reality, right? And in that way, the spear has this infinity behind it, right? Compared to that single molecule that's right up front, right? There's so much mass pushing it forward. Potentially the mass of the actual person, the mass behind that person being their family, that family coming from the earth, that earth spinning around the sun, that sun spinning around a supermassive black hole, that supermassive black hole flying through the void of space at unfathomable amounts of energy. Right? There's so much momentum. You are the tip of that spear. You're the tip of it. Reality absolutely cutting through the noise. Infinity pushing something limited. Something that considers itself singular. All right? The spear is whole. The spear is full as a spear, as a thing. Right? The spear isn't necessarily as concerned. It might sharpen again, but might not be concerned for the actual molecules. Right? Even some molecules might be lost in the sharpening process. Reality is rough, yo. Reality is so brutal. And yet, if that's the case, what can we do to make it better? And then we're back to love is true. Isn't that true, Funny Bite? I don't think I've seen that username before, Funny Bite. Are you gonna give me one? Hello, Funny Bite. Hey, Kristen. Blessing our friends and hi. Yeah, we're talking today about limitations versus unlimitedness. Technically, fullness is the word that we used, right? True fullness. Fullness in the way that you cannot take away from it. And how, comparatively, every experience we can ever have as a human body will be limited. On a fundamental level in comparison to that which you actually are. You cannot, ought not, expect the physical to reach or to give you something that makes you feel complete. Because it can't. It's impossible. You already are, right? You cannot ask for something you have. Right? It's like you're like, where's my phone? And you're holding it in your hand kind of vibes. Jen from Dullies. Have you been in the streams before? Jen from Dullies. Oh, from Dulstrup. Oh, Jen. So, the first time I met Jen, I don't know if you know. I think his name is Tristan. I know it's like rude to ask a person, do you know another person in your town? But when I went to Dulstrom last, I was doing my live stream, and I did even walk into your confectionery store doing the live stream. But this kid just like pulls up a chair and we have a conversation, and he's been shooting into streams, and now here you are too. Bless you. Jan, it's nice having you. How have you been? How have you been? Today's stream topic again, I don't know if you heard, is about this contrast. Oh goodness. Might feel like it's tearing us apart sometimes. How do you cope with the understanding, the conclusion? I think the conclusion is a better articulation. How do you cope with the conclusion that you are God, everything, the universe, as self, and also a limited self, right? In this God, the universe, the everything, right? And for me, the answer in that is that stop seeking this external environment to give you something that's going to convince you of fullness, right? And I'm not suggesting that you don't seek goals. I'm not suggesting that you don't seek love. In that way, even if the experiences are limited, there is still value in confined direction, right? Confining myself to being an artist means that I'll make beautiful things, ideally, right? Confining myself to being an engineer means I potentially make useful things for society, right? Infrastructure or machines. Confining myself to being a musician, I sing or make music, right? So in that way, there is again value in limiting ourselves. But I feel as time goes on, especially as we figure out how to stop aging, we're going to have a lot more time. We're going to have a lot more time to realize that it's limited. Right? And I feel like it's either going to be one of those cases where we're going to become progressively more and more disillusioned by reality in seeking for it to fulfill us, or we're going to already be fulfilled and almost just have this full, I want to use it like full drive. Like imagine your motivation tank is just full, ideally. And we can show up in this world, with that intention. I condone story. You have to cope, allow to feel, and just ease yourself into life. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It really is a part of our experience, huh? Being a human being. Not getting caught up in all of the doing. But I have so much to do, Melt. I say to myself. And it's true. I think it's about finding balance if we're going to ease into life. Right? But I'm thinking about the contrast. How there is some experiences that is good for you to ease yourself into. And some experiences almost benefit from shock therapy. Cold water, for example. Right? You exposing yourself to a little bits of cold water, working yourself up to getting more cold water, doesn't help. Best way to be with the cold water is to be in the cold water. And for you to suffer that experience, for you to be like, oh goodness, this is horrible, and I'm gonna die. And then you find that you're continuing to breathe and that you don't stop, that you don't want to. Coming back full circle to that choice. I really do believe it's an active choice to continue existing. It's so interesting how some experiences can highlight that to you. Right? And I don't know if I would have the perspective I have on life right now if not for those experiences. Coming back from a divine moment of thought, you suddenly have this overwhelming sense to, one, try and help the world. At least I do. I'm like, please, how can I help people? And then usually the reminder is that you are helping people, bro. Can you relax? Can you calm down? You've been helping people this whole time, and I'm talking to you right now, talking to all of us. And then the second realization is that, I am helping. That's why I'm here. And that's why I'm here, is to help. And again, we get caught up. We become very convinced. That's like one of my favorite ones to say. It's the conviction, right? Referencing that easing into life. Allow to feel and just ease yourself into life. It's almost like being convinced. It's like I have to convince myself this is real for it to be, to me. And it's interesting how Reality has always been very malleable to me. And even more interesting to see how I am willing to shape it in a certain way depending on the company. Right? For example, the reality that is usually shaped between me and my dad, and things have been better between me and him conversationally. And it is because I'm shaping to be critical of reality. It's almost like a certain redirection of energy that I've realized I can manage. Right? I cease to exist. I make sure I don't exist in that exchange. Right? Because it's almost like this externality. It's the further away I get consciousness to go from me, the less likely it is that there's anything potentially clashing. And you might be like, that's very vague, Mel. I don't understand what you're saying. I'm saying that instead of having real conversations that actually you care about, you have conversations that you don't care about. And it's more a conversation for the sake of it. And you don't really mind the other person having opinions about it. I don't know if this is making sense. Like, it's like talking about politics, for example. Right? I can talk about politics without caring really about that world. Because I realize that I live outside of it in a way. Sure, I am affected by it, admittedly, but I'm not in it. Right? Me having opinions of one political person or another on a level where I'm going to cast a ballot, right? Valuable. Oh, I have an opinion of this person because of the actions that they have shown, and I'm going to cast my vote accordingly, right? Valuable. Having opinions actively, day to day, about other people, in your mind always, less valuable, right? And in that way, by almost talking about the things that you don't value, it's like low-level interface, enough interface for there to be a connection made, but not so much that any gears start grinding. Yes. How to say without saying anything. I think by speaking in vague terms, you friends get to fill the gaps with your own personal experience. And in that way, there's a whole new experience arising in your minds. You might understand what I'm saying in a completely different way than I'm intending for it. And even though that might mean I'm a bad communicator, and I'm willing to admit that that is in fact true, in these terms, when it comes to the metaphysical and when it comes to the dichotomy between being everything and being limited as a human being, right? You have to be a little bit vague. You have to let your experience fill in the gaps for you, because there is truth for you to discover in your own experience that I cannot tell you. It's not for me to say. It's not for me to say what's right for you as an experience, as a being on planet Earth, right? It's hard for me to even say what's my experience supposed to be. Right? Despite having ambitions, despite having certainty about where I want to end up eventually, the things I want to do eventually, right? Day to day, it's still about showing up. I've been showing up for online courses, you know, like we can poke at that. Still limited, right? But in giving myself these limited little windows of education, I am giving myself less limitations in the future as well, right? I'm just gonna keep stacking certifications until I look like I know how to read. oh, oh, that's so funny. I don't know if anybody understands what I'm laughing at, but A degree is basically a piece of paper that says that you know how to read. And I know, maybe like especially with like engineering, you have to like know how to math too. So it's a little bit more than just the reading part, but it's a lot of reading. And then our traditional educational system is basically a metric of how good can you tell me what I was telling you. And I believe that that's no longer necessarily what's valuable. And that's the other thing that I'm now like fighting against, because there is truths in systems. You're taking online courses, yeah. Uh, the Cardano Foundation has like a whole course. Like it's a big one. I spent a couple of hours today, and I think I got like 6%. But yeah, it's basically like edumacations. You're right, education is mostly theater. Yeah. It's a lot of theater. It's a lot of pieces of paper, right? And that's, I'm gonna be like, oh, bet, right? I have like a bunch of passions, so I'm just gonna keep pushing buttons, right? Passion related, right? And then I'll have a bunch of pieces of paper that says, yeah, Melt knows how to read. He read this one time. Look, here's timestamps. Right? Because again, like I'm trying to gather as much evidence, to say it in so many words, as I can. But it's this underlying feeling of like the evidence I'm gathering is being used to prosecute me. From the joke of like all of these live streams, right? Experientially, this is the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life, right? Not from the perspective of like, oh, it's so hard, but it's actually difficult, right? Like the commitment it takes, the planning, the consideration of my environment. There's a certain, at least I believe, uh, cognitive reasoning, right? Higher level cognitive reasoning actively that has to be happening, right? And I believe that could be a valuable skill to a potential employer, for example. But that employer might see me pouring my soul into this kind of work and be like, oh, this person has not wanted to be a part of the corporate world for looks at my streak that many days. I don't think they would be valuable to our company. Right? So it is this battle with the self, right? Realizing the limitations there is, while at the same time tuning into the part of me that is unlimited. Identifying with that part of myself, I have to acknowledge that there are still things to do, right? Like, yeah, you're everything. So what? Like one of my favorite anecdotes, and I haven't shared it in a long time, so I think it may be a good time to, is this Zen koan. And I am going to be paraphrasing it. But it goes, a monk wakes up one morning, convinced this is the day he's going to ascend. And in the monastery, there is a order, there is a schedule to who mops the floors on each day. And each day, one person gets a turn. And on the day that it's this monk's turn, was the day that he had this epiphany that he's supposed to meditate towards enlightenment. And he sits down. And he doesn't go to breakfast, and he meditates. And he meditates, and afternoon comes, and he doesn't go for midday lunch, and he meditates. And dinner gets close to arriving. Everybody else enter the eating hall, and he reaches his enlightenment. He becomes fully awakened. He becomes aware of the truth, the fact that he is God, that on a real, true level, he is God, and he knows it to every like last fiber of his being. And excited to share this news, this revelation, this realization, he gets up from his meditation spot and he runs towards the dinner hall because he knows It's his, like, he knows people are there, right? People are gathered there. And he bursts into the hall and he tells every single person, like, out loud, like, it finally happened. It happened. I became enlightened. I am God. And they go, good. Now mop the floor. It's your turn. It's your turn to mop the floor. Yes, you're God. Yeah, of course. Took you long enough to realize. I'm happy that you did. Now mop the floor. All right, and I feel like that's where I'm at right now. I'm like, fine. I'll mop floor. Fine. Fine, I'll do it. Fine. People talking at your face that do not have anything to do with your life or do not care. You needing to read. It's over, bro. You did it. Sorry. More still will be done. And then more still. And then more again. It was nice having you, friends. Here, we'll do a little bit of a shorter one. It is turning dark. I guess I could have turned the light on. I don't know what's better. I think this is better. To me. Hey, if it helps you, bro. Bro. It is a matter of like it helping me. And I think we're very motivated by what helps. Especially these days. It's because like we are not necessarily being helped by our governments, for example. Not many of us are so lucky. You see my psychedelic elephants? What would that elephant have to say to you? Goodbye message has been sent. Thank you, Kristen Fran. One more time for the poem reading. The celestial carnival of us. In the grand ballroom of existence, our hearts perform a dazzling ballet. Each beat a note in a symphony of wonder, each moment a masterpiece in motion. Our bonds shine like celestial chandeliers, illuminating the midnight corridors with bursts of laughter and starlit secrets, each connection a brushstroke on the canvas of time. Dreams pirouette through the cosmos, a parade of fearless hopes and playful ambitions. They perform whispered wishes. They transform whispered wishes into constellations, guiding us with a brilliance that defies gravity. Hobbies become our secret gardens where passions bloom like rare exotic flowers, each talent a petal unfurling in the sun, reminding us that creativity is the pulse of life. Together, we compose a masterpiece that is equal parts elegance and exhilaration, a world-class carnival where every smile, every leap, every quiet moment of joy resonates like the laughter of the universe. The cosmic giggles, all right? The cosmic giggles. It's kind of a joke. It is kind of a joke. Yeah, you're everything, but also a limited human being. Good luck. All right. And the entities, higher dimension, lady, laugh. They're like, this is hilarious. Look at them stumbling around, not knowing anything, figuring it out. Look at them. Yearning for love, your light. It's always true. Never more than a thought away. On Theosophia, We put a wall of love around America. A wall of love around America. Thank you for being here, Mel, and all of you all. Thank you for showing up with us, Kiefer. I know you know, but I'll tell you anyway. You add value to this space, dear friend. I can say goodbye with Kristen's goodbye message, saying, have the most sublime day, everyone. I wholeheartedly love you all so graciously, ardently, luminously, sweetly, dearly, openly, warmly, purely, kindly, soulfully, Melt, and all of you, oh so thoughtful and gentle and radiant and wise, steadfast and loving and sincere and patient, joyful, nurturing friends who embrace fullness versus limitations. Yeah, Kristen. Thank you for that loving message. Jovan, blessing Kristen too. Blessing all of you. Thank you for joining me. We did it. We showed up again. MeltMore love. Love to you too, dear friends. Thank you for joining me in these moments. Finding yourself present, finding yourself calm enough and patient. The spirit of Shan. Thanks, Kristen. Love is true. Sending Shan her blessings too. Sending all of your love-ins. I'll see you soon. When we do. Goodbye for now. Love you.